o'clock, and I am calling to order the Sanborn Regional School District Budget Committee meeting on December 5th. Let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a quorum today. The only member missing today is Dan. And it was excused. He let me know he was not going to be able to make it. And we need to approve both the meeting minutes from November 7th and the 13th. Last time we met on the 13th, we had just received the November 7th. I had them printed out. So we do need to make an amendment on our acceptance of minutes on the 13th. So one quick edit on that one because we did not vote on minutes. But everything else looked okay to me. I don't know if anyone has any need to vote on it, but any other comments?
The only correction is
Okay.
Jeremy Neal's name has been misspelled on both of the minutes. So that needs corrections.
Okay, so 2 corrections. Summer, you got that? Awesome.
It's Neault. Yep.
Anyone wanna?
Motion to accept.
All right. With the changes?
Get it rolling.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ken?
I'm sorry.
Meeting minutes?
I approve.
All right. Meeting minutes approved for November 17th and 13th with the name change and the change on the 13th for acceptance of minutes. Moving on our agenda, school board update. Micah.
Okay. Last night, the board voted to accept with an amendment the superintendent's budget. So we proposed, we made a motion. Many of you, I'm sure, have either watched the video already or know about it. So we made a motion to add 3 positions back into the budget that had previously not been present. And that motion was accepted the motion carried. So now that's the big update. So now we have a budget for consideration tonight.
And Mac, I wrote it down, but I didn't bring my notepad with me. The exact number.
The exact number was $40,322,601.21.
And I'm doing numbers and math here. 300 and how much was the difference?
The difference between that and the default, or between the original proposed?
Original.
The original proposed was, well, you want the difference. The difference was $325,145.21.
Thank you.
And I can I can save for the deliberation portion if you want to expand on why, or I can give you a short summary of the logic behind that decision now if you would like.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
I just had a couple questions on numbers, but it is still your time.
Oh, no, sure. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the decision last night was based on a lot of different factors. One, we all wanted to make sure that we noted that Dr. Ambrose was and Mr. Malilla were very, very diligent in presenting a budget, precisely the way we asked them originally to present us a budget, which was a very, very thin and aggressive budget based on the fact that we have dwindling enrollment and we have Fremont leaving. And we looked at that budget and noticed that one of the, the reasons that the budget was able to be so thin was that we were uh, reducing some positions in the unified arts areas of Bakey and Memorial. And we had a lot of discussion. We had a lot of public input. We had a lot of input, throughout the past few weeks, a lot of input amongst, our own deliberations. And we also met with all of you, or most of you, with the building administrators and talked about, that was one of the main topics that we talked about. And the, this sort of overriding sentiment from the board was that, of the school board, was that these positions are really critical to the student learning and success at those ages. We didn't add all the positions that were recommended back into the budget, but specifically the art teacher, the music teacher at the middle school, and the STEAM teacher, for a lot of reasons, ranging from the fact there's a lot of really good forward momentum going at Bakey and Memorial right now. And this is one of those, not only is it a culture thing, but for staff retention, it's really, really positive. Everything's trending in the right direction. But the biggest reason was that we learned through our conversations that a lot of these teachers, they provide such incredible, both tangible and intangible, and sometimes harder to measure on paper, but there are these benefits, these intangible benefits for the students and for their learning that's really, really important at this stage in the game. So we figured this is something that we can do. We know that there's going to be cuts coming. We know that there's times are going to get harder, but right now we balanced what's in the best interest, we believe, of our kids and our communities with that decision.
Right. Questions for Micah?
Ken?
During that discussion last night, was there any attempt to find money to take things out to balance the budget the way it was presented a week ago?
Yeah. So, I mean, when we know that there are opportunities, like for example, every year, what is it about? Tom, help me with this, about the money that gets returned to taxpayers.
Sure. Well, last year was about 1.4 million.
Right.
The year before, and it wasn't BA then, I want to say it was half of that. I'm just going on memory from meetings that there were maybe 600,000, but I have to double check that number.
Yeah. So there are places that we can look to continue to be, responsible with the way that we actually spend the budget, right? To ensure that we're not overspending. Obviously, we can't overspend, but to make sure that, as the administrators always do, spend the money in a responsible way. This still keeps the budget below the default with this money added back in. So, and there are always discussions about, oh, what else could we do here? What else could we do there? We felt like there are a lot of needs, though. There are line items in the budget that need to be there. So we weren't prepared at that point to necessarily take anything else out to compensate for this. We felt that we did leave two of the positions that were recommended out of the budget. So it was a bit of a balancing act in that way.
I just want to remind everyone, the default budget could have been $700,000 higher. We reduced the default budget this year, and I think that got lost in the presentations at the early phase. We reduced a number of positions last year, and those are not in your default budget. So the default budget is $700,000 lower than it could have been. We presented you a default budget that we reduced positions from the default budget. We also absorbed a 15% increase in health insurance. 15%. That is a significant sum of money. We spend $6 to $7 million on health insurance. Does everyone understand the significance of our health insurance and the budget is, if there, in order to do an effective school budget, you have to have 3 to 4% room in the budget annually. Schools are not a business. Schools are public entities, and you understand, a nonprofit, a public entity, you can only spend up to what the voters approve. That's all you can spend. There are very few mechanisms for us. We can't sell off capital. We can't reorganize our finance. We can't go into a chapter 11. We can't, if there's a problem, this is the ceiling. So when you're setting a ceiling, you have to understand that we already combed through this budget to find that extra. Normally our insurance comes in at 4 to 6%. It came in at 15. We already found that money for you. We did not add to the budget when that happened. There's a point where you have to be able to give back 3 to 4% at the end of every year, because if you don't have that room, if something big happens, you'd be in real trouble, right? And that's in addition to capital reserves. Like I was just looking in the paper the other day, one of the nearby school districts had a budget for shortfall of 1.1 million. They had an issue with their revenues. They had to use all their reserves, 1.1 million. Just happened a few weeks ago. We have had really, really good budget processes here, and things are going very well, because in addition to the 1.3 to 4 million that we turn back, we're also reserving 2.5% for emergencies that then goes back later. We're doing everything right. That's why it's running smoothly. And a lot of times what people don't understand is that they think that by doing what Ken just asked, which Ken, I totally understand why you're asking. I'm not disagreeing with you. Like you want to look for bringing in a school budget at below default is very unusual. And I think that one thing that I'm concerned about is that people are starting to kind of just expect that. Normally a superintendent brings in a budget to 600,000 to 800,000 more than the default. And then they fight it out with everyone and try to get it to come in at 400,000 to 500,000 more than the default. And then they fight with the community to try to get them to approve it, and then they accept the default. Because of our declining enrollments, we're bringing you budgets below the default. That is exceptionally rare, and still giving you back $1 million every year. So I just think that at some point, I just need you to hear from me that my recommendation this evening is that this is the bare minimum budget that we need to run this district this year. And I'm asking you to approve it. Right? The board worked really hard to figure this out. We combed this budget line by line. You'll see that the art supplies went up a little bit, other things went down. We went right down to the granular level.
Yeah, and to paraphrase what I just said earlier, we asked, and to summarize what Tom said, we asked him to cut it deep, and there was an area where it was a little too deep, right? From a student learning, from a culture, even just from a practical standpoint, right? It was a little deep. So, but it's still a deep cut, even now.
Staying flat or going just below default is basically a 3 or 4% cut on the budget every year, because everything grows by at least 3 to 4%. That's why we're saving almost $8 million a year right now from where, if it had just gone at a normal curve, remember the graph I showed you? The budget today, if it had gone up at a normal curve, would be 48 million if we hadn't done what we'd done. And this is going to get way harder. So the thing I said to the board last night is, I appreciate having the 3 positions back, but just know that if things get harder or tighter, those aren't going to be able to stay in the budget. Other things will have to go. We have to have conversations about, this is going to get way harder in the next 4 years. So everyone, I gave you the first round of what it's going to feel like. This is just the beginning, right? I do not anticipate budgets that are above the default ever for the next 4 years with Fremont leaving. Just doesn't make any sense.
My comment, again, I didn't have any questions on the budget I saw last week. I didn't submit anything, I accepted it. Tonight we come back in with 325,000 extra.
Mhm.
So now I don't like it. So I'm going to vote no on the budget. The school committee has the right to look, okay, we'll give you these people, those teachers, but we're going to take it out of here, or we're going to take it out of there. I think that's our responsibility, because it comes to us, and we can't do that.
Well, no, I mean, we're
moving on to the next
I've
agenda.
concluded my update.
It's
I'd
okay,
love to, we can address that.
Happy to answer.
Right. Yeah.
So school board update. Thank you, Micah. And it kind of hops around, but we're floating in between the next 2 agenda items. And so we were able to submit our questions to Matt and answered those. Were there any comments from the committee on the questions and answers? Brooks, Micah?
I appreciate that Matt Matt actually took, I came in and talked to him and we cleared up a whole lot of questions that I didn't even have to put on there. But then I put several questions and it was very, very thorough in answering them. I can't claim being new to the committee anymore, but it just amazes me that we have a school board and a school budget committee and a monstrously large budget, and there were only 3 people who had any questions about anything. Is that normal? Do we just all rubber stamp and say, okay, whatever it is you want, I'll accept all of this?
Well, I have to respectfully disagree with you that it's a rubber stamp when we spend hours and hours doing what you did with Matt, because you may have spent an hour or two with Matt answering questions, which is awesome. Thank you for taking the time to do that. I have hours and hours of those conversations over a 2-month period with tons of people myself. So there's lots of conversations that happen about the budget.
And they're all sort of one-on-ones.
Sometimes, and sometimes they're not. Like sometimes they're
Best way to present a budget? I mean, I don't know. It seems that there should be a whole lot more transparency, but.
Well, nothing's being done secretly. If anyone asks a question, it gets answered. Like if you don't want to have the conversation with Matt and you want to put your questions in writing, when I met Dr. Brown, I would stand up and read questions for 2.5 hours, literally. Literally, I read, I think, 230 questions the first year. There's no lack of transparency. If anyone wants to know something, we'll tell you. So I have to respectfully say that the BudCom and the board requested that we have those meetings with the administrators where people do the what we lovingly call the budget speed dating. And that is a process that this group asked for. The way it was originally done was that I would present the budget on the first night and there were no conversations with anyone but me. And all the questions had to go in writing to the BudCom, to the business administrator and myself from the board and BudCom. And then I would stand there and read every single answer for 2.5 hours. That's the ultimate level of transparency. So I think that the question is what would you all like? Do you know what I mean? Because part of why this is running smoother is because we're spending so much time individually with people. But Terry, if you would feel more comfortable with everyone knowing what you asked Matt, and so they could hear the answers, because I think that's wonderful. Just submit the questions in writing, and then we'll just answer them in writing. That's totally fine.
Perhaps a different form. I did appreciate very much the speed dating meeting, as you call it.
Yeah. And we were glad you came in, by the way, which is great to talk to him,
And I was with Dawn, the chair of who knows all of the answers. So she let it all up to me. She just kind of let me go and ask all the questions I wanted. And there was a lot of information. And that's very, very helpful. I just feel that there's still an awful lot in here that I don't understand or know. And I find it hard to believe that everybody else does know everything about it, but.
Well, a lot of the times, like it's just from a school, I don't know, I can't speak for this committee, but on the school board, a lot of these line items they come up in other contexts, right? In questions or in, things relating to athletics, or, we have facilities, for example, we have every.
You have a subcommittee.
We have a subcommittee for facilities where we're talking about, we had to move this line item to this line to pay for this, we had to do this for that. So a lot of the expenses that are in there, we kind of it's our language that we're speaking every couple of weeks anyway. So I think our silence on the questions is, it may be, it may appear like we don't know what's going on, rubber stamping it, but it's just because we're so deep into it that we actually probably don't have a ton of questions relating, because it's a lot, it's huge, right? It's a lot, it's a big thing, right?
I took it home for 2 weeks.
Yeah, no, there's no question that it's an overwhelming document. I mean, how long does it take you to prepare it?
I can't even tell you, but
Right.
And you guys ask questions all the time. What things on manifests?
We do manifest.
What was this expenditure for? If it looks like something,
building that knowledge over a period of months. You know what I mean?
Well, we also have a more seasoned board right now. So like when I was brand new, the board was new too. So the questions come up more. And I think that the other thing that I think is important to remember for the public, and I'm glad you brought this up, Terry, because it's really important for everyone to understand that the budget is not, it's a roadmap, but 80% of it is fixed. It's the people, which is why when the board says to me, we're losing revenue for Fremont, you have to make reductions. It's going to be people, 25 people. over a 5-year period. I've already reduced over 40 people since I've been here. Right. So it's like you can't manage a school budget by nitpicking $1,000 lines or $100 lines or $5,000 lines. That's part of, like, if those don't go up at 3% a year, you are trimming those lines. Right? Because those lines should go up 3 to 5% a year, and we haven't brought them up in 4 years. Many of those lines have stayed the same. In fact, the only one we really increased this year that I noticed was the art supplies, because they really needed some things. The art department met with the principals. But I think that, to Ken's point, there's only one place when you're looking for that much money, $400,000 in this budget. We already found 500,000 for the health insurance increase was massive. I'm nervous about how tight this budget is going to be. I really am, because the health insurance increase was big, the biggest we've ever seen since I've been here. And I know that means that the amount of money or flexibility that we have for emergencies decreases exponentially. And so my answer is to great question that many people wonder about. The reality is that there are only 3 or 4 areas that you can really go to if you want to, quote, cover a cost when you add something to a budget like this. You either have to take it from health insurance, because there has to be flexibility in health insurance. If you are on a single family plan and you're a single person plan, it's about $10,000, $12,000. If you get married, it doubles. If you have a kid, it's $40,000 next year. So you could swing from 10 grand to 40 grand in 6 months. We have hundreds of employees. That's one employee. So all we need is 10 people to do that, and we're out $400,000, $300,000 to $400,000. So there has to be room and elasticity in the health insurance area. The other one is facilities. We are woefully, I mean woefully, underfunded in facilities. This building is 20 years old. It looks amazing because our custodians are fantastic. But that money that went into the facilities account is not enough. It's a start. That's going to have to be taken care of over the next few years. Bakey needs all new fire suppression work. Bakey needs, they have old school pneumatic heating controls. I mean, we're talking like 1980. That means, do you know how much money you're paying for oil when that's that way? Like, you've got to put in electrical systems. It's all in the CIP plan that the board approved last night. That plan is a multi-million-dollar plan. It has these, you cannot run these facilities and not pay for them. And it's very expensive. So I just want to be careful, because Terry, I agree with you. We have over a $40 million budget. I would argue that budget is only going to get smaller or tighten up if the district makes the decision at some point to really reconsolidate all of their resources. And that's a bigger conversation than today. We're not there yet. Fremont hasn't left yet. But the reality is that if you run all the buildings that we have, even if the SAU office, where my office is right now, is the best deal you have in the district. It's $85,000, $90,000. It includes heat, hot water, electricity, and it houses over 22 people. But if enough students leave this building, we have to have a conversation about whether or not we keep that. We have to have a conversation about whether or not we're in one of the schools again. I don't know. We're just starting that process, but I think everyone thinks that should be done today, and it's just not time yet. We're getting there, though. Next year's budget is the first budget that we make without the Fremont freshmen. So next year, I was prepping everyone for next year with this year's budget. Does that help, Ken? Do you understand?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have,
Yeah. You don't have to like it or even. Yeah, sorry, but it's not a like or dislike thing. It's just facts, right? The facts are,
answers.
if you want the budget to go down by those sums of money, people have to go. That's all I'm trying to say. There's no other place to like magically massage the budget unless you take away the money from the facilities, which is foolish because you're just gonna.
Tom, I was going to chime in on this. And Micah will confirm this. At last night's finance and facility meeting, I let them know that pretty much all the facilities maintenance and repair lines are zero, and we're only 5 months into the year. So it's gonna be a lot of transfers looking towards the facility revolving use fund. Hopefully nothing major. goes, but I mean, we have aging, this building's aging, and this is by far our youngest building. So Dan Doyle does a fantastic job. He knows our buildings and our facilities inside and out. But last year, and I re-listened to being new, I re-listened to this meeting last year, and the facilities budget was brought in really lean intentionally because of some of the other financial challenges we had. And now it's showing because we're pretty much out of money, which is fine. We will be creative. We'll find ways to fund our repairs and maintenance needs for the next 7 months. But to Dr. Ambrose's point, that additional money that we put in the FY26 or the proposed budget for facilities is going to be needed. Not even just maybe for the CIP, but just to help us deal with our aging infrastructure.
It's my thought with the facilities budgets. I don't know how old Bakey is and all those, but if we go back over the last 20 years, no money was put into those buildings.
Exactly.
So now all of a sudden, we got to have a new building. We got a high school that's 20 years old. No money was put into repairs in the high school until it fell apart. And this is not just Sanborn, this is municipal government. They budget money for facilities, and then they transfer it to cover the other things. So at the end of the year, nothing gets repaired. And now we're sitting here saying, well, all the buildings are falling down. Well, you know what? We can't afford to fix them.
And if people if you don't give back enough at the end of the year, the tax rate gets all crazy. Right. So then the tax rate starts to go. We keep the tax rate really stable here, but I couldn't agree with you more. The first month that I was hired, Dr. Brown was with me on that first year. And I told everyone, I said, I've inherited a royal mess with these buildings. Well, and they are, and we have to do something about it now. I can't own it 10 years later.
It's important to note too, the capital improvement plan approved last night is not a blank check to, all of a sudden we're like, oh, we're going to do all this crazy stuff, right? It was triaged. It was like, it was very much a question of what can we wait on for 4 years? What can we wait on for more than 2 years? What can we wait on? So we really sort of trim down the list of things that we say, okay, these are the primary things that need to be addressed first. And how can we get creative in doing those things, right? So it's, again, and like the budget, it's not a static document, right? It's a living, flexible kind of thing, which would be good.
My problem is that last week we had a budget and I said, great, I'm not going to mess with it. This week we have an increase. There was no attempt made to make that increase less.
Oh, no, that's not true.
We
What
did.
they take out of the budget?
No, Ken, I'm telling you, there's nothing left to take. We had a 15% increase in health insurance. I just respectfully disagree that if the board, I told the board last night, and these were my exact words, if you want to add those positions back in, you have to add the money.
Right. And
So I just want you to understand that was their choice, right? There was no place that I'm advising you all very carefully. There is no money to take out of this budget. We had a 15% increase in health insurance and we didn't increase the budget. I cannot stress enough how much money that is.
and I'll be clear on this part again, if is it okay?
Yep. I think we're straying into the next item. So
Sorry,
I
Courtney.
do want
I'll
to,
answer it in the next item.
Can I just
I'll
ask
wait.
a quick question?
Yeah,
yeah.
Matt, could you entertain me and give me a dollar figure on the actual increase on health insurance? I think that'll kind of put things into perspective for us.
It's been a few weeks since we looked at it. It was 700,000. I'm trying to remember now. I mean, it was 15% of just over 6 million. So it was like, I want to say it was 600 something thousand we found. 600, it was 600,000.
We put 10% in the budget that I presented on November, whatever the date was, the first budget presentation. And then just a couple days later, it came in at 15%. So we had to find another 5.
Okay.
And it's roughly $6 million. So we had to find $500,000. I mean, I'll let Matt, if he can find the actual exact numbers, but
it was less than 48 hours before we were presenting the proposed budget. And I was like, oh my God, Tom, we were budgeting for 10%. And that was even, my predecessor was like 10% safe and it came in at 15. I'm like, so actually, yeah. So it was, we were scrambling the last minute to make some more cuts, which we did. Yeah.
get blood from a turnip.
Let me see. Don't wait on me.
Okay.
We'll
Any
just
other-
say somewhere between 600 and 700,000 then, right?
Yeah,
There's a-
but I'll get you the exact number. It was
Okay.
I have a document, I have a spreadsheet. I just gotta, it's been more than a month since I've looked at it, just because it was pre-presentation of the budget.
Any other questions, Brooks?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Micah? Good. Terry, anything else? You okay? Amanda?
Good.
All right. So Terry, to your point, I spent a lot of time my first year, and I probably had about 15 pages worth of questions and spent a lot of time. So I'm very familiar with the budget. And the one thing I've been pushing for the past 2 years is that we get some money into the capital line item. Every year I've mentioned it, and every year we've gone without it. So I'm very excited to see that. And yeah, I had minimal questions because I really do think that the round robins and everything really, I was able to ask any of the Bowling Green questions on that front. So again, thank you, Matt, for taking the time to answer the questions. But that's all my comments on that. And Pam, do you have any comments on the answers?
No, Matt helped me out. I asked about the school counselor ratio to students, thinking we're a little bit high or low relative to school council numbers. And we've been going around about this, but at least got a number. If we had reduced by one school counselor full-time, what would the savings be? And that would be would be $92,717 if we were to reduce, including benefits. So I'd still like to see that happen, but I understand Tom has his reasons, the superintendent has his reasons for not wanting to reduce that number. And I'd also asked about using the revolving funds for our technology needs next year, 90,000. And some of the facilities improvements, we have over 400,000 in our capital I&M fund. Can that be used in part facilities? So those were my questions and they were all answered. Not that I agreed with them, but I got answers. That was very helpful. Thank you.
Ken, anything else?
You know what?
Okay.
Said my piece.
All right. I just want to make sure before I move on to the next one. So that was the end of the Q&A portion. And now the review of the school board. The operating budget that we got from Matt was $40,322,601.21, which was, as we mentioned, $325,145.21. Increase from what the proposed budget was. And I'm going to kick it off with one quick question related to the CIP. That was something that when I first started was in progress or I thought had been approved. Is this a new one, a reapproved one?
There are multiple ones on the website that, are from the past. So I believe
This is new.
if I'm wrong, this would be a revised
Revised,
2026 to 2030.
right, appropriately triaged and organized, where the improvements themselves have been leveled according to need and importance. So, but I think it also, when was the last one done before?
I can tell you, it's right here.
Officially, it was years ago. This was part of our school board this year was to finalize that. And it's part of our strategic plan. And we kept working on it and it kept stuff would come up and it would get put aside. So we made it a firm goal this year to get it solidified and adopted by the board. And that happened last night.
What's also, as far as I can tell, it's also that now it's organized in such a way, or the framework is in such a way that it can, it's capable of having its items move around and have new items added to it as needed, right? Before it felt a little, the old one that I looked at felt a little bit more static, right? This is more of a roadmap, which says, here are our top priorities, here's lesser priorities, but all of a sudden there could be a thing that happens. And now we have good insight into what's required so that we can put this in here and bump this down and we can sort of continue to, make it aligned to our needs as we see them in the present.
Jump in here and ask a question. Is
Sure,
this
sure.
fail?
Yes.
So, yes,
Yep.
Where is this?
We
I
can-
haven't-
well, it was just approved last night.
Just approved last night.
Yep.
We can
Yeah.
send you a
On
link.
the website has a capital improvement plan on it. There was one that was from 2018 to 2022, but then an additional one from 2020 to 2025.
New one is not available.
No,
We can send it to you. Phyllis, it's just, it hasn't even been 24 hours.
Okay.
Like,
and
we'll-
importantly, what it doesn't do, just so everybody knows here, given the nature of our committee here, it doesn't attach dollar amounts to any of the things that are required, right?
Yeah.
It's just task oriented, sort of, this needs to be done, this needs to be done. And we rely on our facilities. We rely, Dan Doyle, for example, there's stuff that we're like, oh, we need to do this thing. What was the PFAs? What did you get the grant for?
Oh, the PFAS filters.
Yeah.
So, you hear about PFAS in the water now. It's like, I think it was the Merrimack area where
Yeah.
all those neighborhoods, their water supplies were contaminated with this PFAS chemical that came from like fire retardant materials and
The forever
that could-
chemicals, right?
yeah, and they're believed to be carcinogenic. And the Dan Doyle applied for a grant to get PFAS filters, and because this property here has low levels in it, lower than the limit, so it's considered safe. But nevertheless, there's some in the water on this property. He got a grant, a $30,000 grant to get filters for our water treatment system, which is great because you never know. I actually have an environmental background in terms of in geology. You never know; those levels could go up, or the government could drop the levels, and suddenly you exceed them, and then you're on the hook for buying a $30,000 filter system. Dan Doyle got the grant.
And the reason I mentioned that, of course, is that, the capital improvement plan is the capital improvement plan, but
It's not dollar oriented.
it's not a dollar oriented thing. And there's always ways that we can try and, get these things done in ways that are, fiscally responsible and
What we
especially
don't,
with Dan's knowledge.
I think the intention, if I may, is the goal is to make sure that there are no surprises. So we know that we need to deal with fire suppression at Bakey. We know that we have to deal with the portable building eventually that's attached to the memorial school. We know that we have to deal with the residential units that do heating of air at Memorial that are at end of life, which I don't really love the term end of life, because what does that really mean? They're just old, right? So you have to be ready for them to go. And so, and I know that Dr. Brown didn't love the answer, but my response to one of her questions was, there's two types of accounts that you have to have when you run an organization of this size. You have to have emergency money and you have to have mindful planned money. And Ken is right that a lot of municipal organizations have money for the mindful part and end up spending it on emergencies. And then the stuff never gets done. He's 100% correct. So we're trying to not have that happen. And it's very challenging because I think the first thing that I would say to Ken, if he said, Tom, you're going to cut something from this budget to fund those 3 positions that the board added, I would look at you and say, you got to cut the money for facilities. Well, we can't. We've got buildings that are old and have serious issues, and they're going to become crisis issues. It's happened to me 3 times since I've been here. Pam and I had to put a roof on the Swayze gym, $250,000 at the end of the school year when she was on the school board. I had to put new boilers in Bakey, $450,000 with no notice. That's end of the year spending that could have offset taxes.
Mhm.
If that had been planned mindfully, it would have been done in a sequence with a budget item. The water at Memorial and Bakey, when the water systems failed, they had to be fixed. It's not optional. So we have to have accounts to be proactive, and we have to have accounts to handle the things when they come up. It is not adequate. There is not adequate money in our reserves for special education in this district. I've been saying this for years. A district of this size should have 750 to $1 million in special education reserves. We have 230,000. Okay. I've been saying it for years so that when it comes up and bites me, everyone knows I've been public and transparent about it. A district of this size should have 750 to $1 million in capital reserves for emergencies. We had the roof fall in at the middle school the year before I came here. They had to do it with the budget. They didn't have reserves. They had to fix it. So I'm simply saying that I'm agreeing with you, right? And I know you get it. So I'm just saying that if you ask me where it has to come from, it has to come from something that's going to hurt more in the long run. Budget.
Yeah, and that's to be now I can sort of Tom gave us the same information he just gave you, and we collectively more or less, decided that there are things, I use this analogy, right? Fremont's leaving, and it's going to get worse and worse in terms of, you have we're dwindling student enrollment, and Tom says to us basically, you're going to lose you're going to have to amputate your arm in a few years, and so let's cut your hand off today, just to get ready, right? And our perspective is we want our kids to have their hand for as long as they can have it. And maybe it's not that long, right? But we know that this is additive. We know there's nowhere else to take it from. And but we also know that there are serious detriments to not just the unified arts, but to the educational experience of these kids that will affect math, will affect reading, will affect their social emotional well-being, right? Which goes a long way in terms of, it can go a long way in terms of making this a desirable place to live and go to school, which can have positive effects from a financial aspect on the district. So these are the things that we're weighing. So it's not that we're not aware that this is additive and didn't wish that we could find the money to pay for it to keep the superintendent's recommendation flat, which is why probably we didn't add all 5 positions back in.
Yeah, there were people who
3,
wanted
right?
to add all 5.
There were people that, we wanted to add all 5, but
Yeah.
there was a compromise, a balance.
If that helps.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. I'm gonna say one more thing on the UA teacher. There was a young lady that spoke.
Young lady. She was quite young lady.
Yeah. And I just want to relate is my daughter is a no recess child as well and has thoroughly enjoyed the enrichment options, and it would have been it would have been sad for her to not have that anymore, and she definitely benefits from the UA. So
Did
I'm
you
happy
feel
that they're
Sanborn added in the right 2 positions?
the right
The STEAM, the music, then the STEAM. I'm sorry, the
Yep.
music, the STEAM and the art.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for the feedback. I was just curious.
I agree with those changes, and I appreciate you taking the time and making those considerations and the proposals that were made. So that's my last comment for deliberation. So I'm going to get off my out of my spot and hand it over to Brooks and see if there's anything about the changes, the school board recommended budget that you would want to.
Being in education myself, knowing how important UA is, being a student myself that enjoyed UA, I believe it's something that we shouldn't be getting rid of. I'm still happy that we're able to still come under default by bringing those 3 positions back in. And I have really nothing else to say about it.
Yeah. I just put everyone on the spot.
That's all right. It's okay.
Micah, you've had a lot to say. Anything
I'm
else?
happy to continue to answer any questions anybody else has.
All right. Terry?
Well, of course, I am not pleased at all at having to put positions back in. So you put those 3 back in this year because it's painful to keep them out. So now next year, you got to take those same 3 out and maybe 3 more, a math and an English and a history teacher. So next year, it's got to be more.
Yeah.
With declining enrollments, you cannot just continue business as usual. Isn't it better to take some out this year and a few out next year and sort of make some of these dramatic changes slowly? I don't. No, of course I don't approve of them putting those 3 positions back in at all. That one thing, Tom, you mentioned, and It's totally baffling to me. You said you reduced the default by 700,000.
Yeah, if you don't fill positions, you don't have to put them in the default. And we have positions that we didn't fill.
So you're taking last year's budget
Mhm.
minus unfilled positions
Some unfilled positions.
and requesting that plus whatever the percentage is that goes to the
We,
default.
we are trying to make it as tight as we can, Terry. Yeah.
Yeah.
We understand that with the declining enrollments in Fremont going, this has to come down.
And
I want to echo to you that my intention with putting in this budget was that it's time to start feeling how hard this is really going to be. And the board, I respect the board, and I'm not going to be one to speak against my board. You know, they're my board, but I'm simply saying my recommendation was my recommendation. The board went another direction, and I support my board.
Which we asked him to.
They asked me to make the recommendations. This is
This is going to get dicey.
Yep.
We want you to really cut it.
push.
So he did.
Yep.
And it's about balancing the need for the future with the concrete reality of today and tomorrow. Like there are actual measurable detriments to the learning environment that I can imagine and we can see will take place if we lose, say, those three positions. Now we know, to be fair to everybody, what the superintendent recommended wasn't a reduction in programming, right?
that's
was-
exactly what I
It wasn't,
understood.
it wasn't
So
a reduction in programming.
it made
so
sense because
what-
the children were still going to get all of the
What they would,
music and the art.
right, what they would get is the minimally required experience, right? Those teachers are providing things that are beyond what is minimally required. And like I mentioned before, there are these intangible benefits for kids that often slip through the cracks academically, that have opportunities, that, familiar faces that are in the building all day, that they had this art class with this person, they're also in the lunchroom. They're also, they're filling gaps that it's just like, remember Tom said, you can't have a budget that's not, that doesn't have an extra 3 to 4% built into it. You cut it too thin, what are you going to do? Same thing with people, right? You can reduce these people. You can take them out of the equation, but then you're at the bare minimum, not just for coverage, but for FaceTime, for enrichment, for all these different things. And it's, we're here to do, from my perspective, and I think I can speak for the board on this, we're not just here to do what's minimally required for the community. We want to respect taxpayers, obviously. We need to be fiscally responsible. We have to put as much of our best foot forward for the kids as we can too. So this is the balance, right? This is the trying as best we can to strike that balance. But I appreciate it's it's a tough sell if you're coming from, I understand
If you're
it.
coming from a position from which
Yes,
I'm
I
coming.
get
yes,
it.
very much so.
And I am sensitive to that.
And you know that tougher decisions are coming.
They are.
Um,
But
very tough positions.
we know that Fremont's leaving. I also don't necessarily want to judge the future by the past. There are things that are trending in certain directions. Who knows? This is we got emails from parents that said for the first time in 3 or 4 years, Memorial feels good again. It feels like it's trending in the right direction. It feels stable. It feels like a good environment. And when 4 years ago, it was what's going on at Memorial? Why is everything all out of whack all the time? This, that, and the other thing, revolving door. And now we passed a teacher contract. We've got a good thing going. This could attract students to our community. Numbers don't have to dwindle. We're going to lose Fremont. We don't have to lose everybody. We could have people coming back from the SCA too.
Well, and can I just say, there's one thing that I think is important for everyone to hear before we continue, and then I think we should keep going because I don't want to kind of just say the same things over and over again. But I support, I'm a musician. I have a degree in music. My wife taught music for 18 years. I know a lot about music instruction. I taught music for a long time. I think it's important for everyone to understand that I went and met with the music teachers. And what I found out after I met with the music teachers myself was that reducing the music position actually would have hurt the band program, the beginning band program at Memorial. So I advocated to add the music position back into the budget and owned that our administrative team did a great job. They did what I asked them to do, which was to come up with cuts. And we had a music teacher retiring, and it's always easier to reduce a position when there's a retirement. And they thought that they knew what the impact was, but I just had that kind of extra background in that area. So I met with the music teachers and got really deep into their schedules and realized it would have been bad. So I backed up adding the music teacher back in. The board added the other two positions.
And when you think about art, and you're thinking about someone teaching 3 classes in one building and then hopping in a car to go to another building and 3 students, when you're setting up the watercolors, getting the clay put back into the bags during class time, right? So like ostensibly there's no cut to programming, but there's going to be an impact, right? Not to mention
Yes.
the fact that I don't know anybody, not to mention the fact that if I was a teacher, I don't want that job.
Yeah.
Right.
So thank
So the personnel is obviously the best way to try to cut money. These positions, again, these are the happy ones.
I can assure you that if anyone made a motion to cut our curriculum director after everything that just happened with NEASC, I would be done here. That'd be the end of Tom. We're not cutting the curriculum director.
I just particularly that.
Yeah, I just want to be crystal clear for my support for her.
That was
Why
corrected
not?
in the budget this year.
Yeah, that was corrected in the budget.
And
Yeah.
Yeah,
it
it used to have
explains
2
all of the-
positions.
Yeah, that was not her salary. I just, for the public, I want everyone to understand that
anyway,
when our math scores go up to 73% in 3rd grade, that goes to Christine DeRocher and her work with the 3rd grade team, and particularly Marianne Klamarzik. So the areas that we're making the growth in with academics that we have worked on together for 8 years, Dr. Brown, she is the key. So I just want to be very careful, Terry, when you say that publicly. Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry if I
No,
felt
it's
like I was picking on one, I was picking
Yeah,
on
we
one
did.
line item.
I want
Not
to
on
be
a
very
person.
careful about that.
I do want to mention though too that these UA positions, you know, I don't want anyone here or at home to think that this was an emotive and non-data driven decision, right? Simply because, you know, there was a turnout, there was a kid. I was harping on Tom for weeks about how we get these things back in the budget, right?
Yep.
And the reason is because there are, you know, simply because it's not, you don't necessarily see the line item or the value in numbers on a budget. It doesn't mean that there aren't measurable ways in which these people impact the school as a whole, including reading and math. Right? So that's just another call out that I want to make, that that the board made, and what we feel is an informed, data-driven decision that happens to be consistent with what people want. We didn't do it because we were, you know, emotionally swayed with the feel-goodery of the, you know, of the crowd, you know, the public comment.
I think what Mike is saying is that they asked me what Ken wanted them to ask. What else could you cut? And my response was, I can't cut anything else. If you want to add them back in, add them back in. But you have to add them in, because I can't come in $350,000, $400,000 below the default and have a 15% increase in health insurance and find more to cut. I can't do that.
Yeah, and we can't.
You're cutting people at that point.
And you
That was
said
the
that-
answer.
And you're not gonna run a budget so tight that we could get into real trouble.
Real trouble.
In case if there's a catastrophe or something, right? So, yeah, we knew full well that this was going to be additive, but it's not for not trying to make it neutral.
Amanda?
So watching all the school board meetings and stuff and seeing the public feedback as well, and knowing how much has gone into these decisions, I mean, I agree with it. I think the 3 positions being added back in makes sense, and I don't see where we could make significant further cuts in the budget, so that's all I have.
Pam, any comments, questions?
Well, I was at the meeting last night, at least for part of it, and I appreciated the speakers and their concerns, and they had good points to make. I did think that the fact that we were preserving the programming at bare minimum before we added those positions back in was an important point that I didn't think had been emphasized last night, but my property taxes are up over 5%, and the cost of living in Kingston has just gone up another 4.5% this year, because New England's COLA goes up more than the national average goes up.
Yep.
And I spent a lot of time at the town hall at meetings, and people, the taxpayers are really hurting right now. I mean, I need a new PC, my pipes are leaking in the basement. And for years, I've always had extra money I've saved around and to pay. I'm looking at using Visa to pay for some of the things that I normally would never, ever put on credit.
No.
So I didn't have 5 taxpayers in here to note these things, but I felt like maybe we could adjust the school counselor positions to accommodate this need and make an attempt at least to do that. And I didn't see that happen. I just feel like the squeaky wheel got the oil, and maybe some other people should squeak as well. That was my bottom line reaction to the evening. It was sad to hear what they had said. I really appreciated their comments. But a lot of stuff done in the town hall is done by volunteers. And I'm thinking, do we have any volunteers, retirees that would come in and help out? When I was in high school, I read to kids after school.
Mhm.
That was my project.
Mhm.
And I did it all through high school. Nobody paid me, but is there any way that we could accommodate those needs without spending additional dollars would be my question. So that was my reaction.
And Ken?
A couple of questions. What's our cost per student this year?
Well, it depends on how you calculate that. Super complicated. The state gives you one number that goes through such a.
Yeah, and if you watch the state videos, they even say the formula is very convoluted and
Yeah, I understand.
um,
But how is that compared to what we were gonna charge Fremont? Is it close?
Fremont would have been slightly, well, it depends. So that's a very, very complicated question. And so what I'll say for the purpose of this evening, I mean, I'm not exaggerating. We could spend 2 hours talking about this. I'll give you
We have many times.
we have. Micah and I have literally spent hours discussing this. Fremont's tuition is based on a very complex formula that's outlined in their contract that I will not be able to go through without actually creating slides, and there's no point. They're leaving. But their amount is over $27,000 per student because of the New Hampshire DOE model, the way that the contract's written and the way that the language is written and what it's based on is not really necessarily congruent to what it was built 20 years ago based on a formula that worked 20 years ago. It doesn't work today the way it should. We offered Fremont 16.5 a student, and they didn't take it. Right. So the cost for Fremont is a very difficult thing to say.
We'll use that rough figure. What's our cost?
It depends on what grade level you're at. It varies from K. I'm going to estimate, just for the sake of the purpose of this meeting, because I understand the question you're asking, roughly 25,000 a student.
Okay, so would that be high school or the whole?
I'm just giving you an estimate. Like, it's kind of like the mid-level estimate. If you're at one level or another, it can go up or down from there.
What's it going to cost us to send our high school somewhere else?
Well, it depends on where you would send them and what the tuition agreement would be with that recipient organization. But there's a bigger question to ask before you ask that question, which is, what would that do to the community and your real estate values? So I want to make sure that everyone understands a key question before, and this is not the evening for this conversation. I can't go down this road right now. It's not appropriate because the board isn't ready to go down that road. But my answer to you would be this. If this high school in a community in New England is the center and the heart and soul of the community, I can tell you sincerely, after 24 years of being in public education, if you choose to send your high school kids to another community, your real estate values will drop. They will drop because you don't have the center to the community anymore. I do not recommend to you as a community, whether I'm here as superintendent or not someday, when it gets to the point where you have to make that decision, I want to be completely transparent. That would be a huge mistake. What you do need to do as a community is have a very serious conversation about the layout of the existing schools based on the enrollments when we get there. That's what you're going to have to talk about. And I can't do that tonight. And the board has asked me to not go there yet because it's not time yet. But we're going to have to go there in the next 2 years.
Okay, good.
Yeah. And I'm not shutting you down. I'm just saying not yet, right? I'm totally open to the conversation.
Position 3 years. The reading and math was so low.
Yep.
And I compliment you all over the place for the fact that it's come up.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Ken.
But I had anything to do with it, but I'm really
Yeah.
pleased.
No, we're all working on it every day.
But I also ran for this position because we had a declining enrollment and increasing budget.
Yep.
I failed completely. Because the 3 years I've been here, the budget gone up, the enrollment's gone down. So the reason I ran, it didn't work. Now, the high schools were losing enrollment.
Mhm.
My thought right now, and this is all projection for next year or 3 years, close the superintendent's office, move it to the high school,
Mhm.
save a bundle.
Well, you'd save $90,000. It's not a bundle.
I'm just-
That's actually the best deal we get. But
Just-
that's another story. Yeah.
When I talked to the high school principal, she talked about storing material in empty classrooms, which is great.
Yeah.
Rent a storage bin. They only cost $20 a month or $100 a month. Use those rooms for something more productive.
Yep.
The trade school we're trying to run here,
Mhm.
it's not paying off for the total school system. It pays
Mhm.
off for the kids who want to do automotive.
Mhm.
But when they graduate, can they go to work for GM or somebody else? Do they have a certificate? What do they get after 4 years of automotive?
Well, they don't take our automotive program is an introductory program. The students that really want to go into automotives as a full-time career typically do automotive here, and then they go to the Seacoast School of Technology, which we have them go to, and they do get industry certificates there.
Okay,
So the
great.
answer is yes.
Then they should go there here. We shouldn't be using that space. Welding, woodworking, electrical, if we have
Yep.
it, plumbing, that's for the seacoast. That's not for Sanborn anymore. When they built the school, people would come. That was the thing. 20 years ago, we're going to build a Taj Mahal and we're going to fill it.
Mhm.
Well, 20 years later, we got an aging Taj Mahal. It's not being filled.
Mhm.
And it's not going to be filled over the next 5 years. Declining enrollments.
The whole state is facing declining enrollments.
Understand?
Mhm. I agree with you, though. I'm agreeing.
So why
There's-
do we continue to maintain the Taj Mahals when we can't fill it?
Right. These are great questions that we have to grapple with in the future, and I appreciate your perspective and agree with you that we need to talk about them.
So this is exactly what you said. We added 3 positions next year. We're going to have to cut 7 to make up for it next year. Because there's a lot more aging people in this community that can't afford to pay more.
And just to be transparent, we did cut a number of positions in this budget for this year. There are a number of positions that aren't.
More budget's cut than added.
Yeah.
I said, the budget I had last week, I had no questions. I was going to vote yes without any comments.
Thank you, Ken. Appreciate it.
Hey, I come back in and I'm saying, oh, well, they came and said, we need more of these. Great. Oh, here you go. Have a couple more. So next year, we're going to say, well, we got to cut 20 positions. And they're going to come back and say, oh, you can't do that. Oh, here, have 3 or 4 more.
Thank you. Thank you. I understand.
One of these days, the board, superintendent is going to have to say to these people, there aren't any more positions.
Mhm.
If you want them, you go to someplace else. But we don't have them. And we're not doing that yet. In the 3 years I've been here, we haven't done that. We've cut positions, the budget one.
I just want to be transparent so the public understands this. The facts contradict what you just said. I have reduced more than 40 positions since I've been here. So I just want to be transparent about that. And I'd be happy to provide you with the data and the numbers that back that up. But you are correct that remember when I presented the budget, I said something that I think is very important. The Ambrose household, Junior went to college. The cost for my house stayed the same, and I'm down 1/4. Let me follow this all the way through. Next year, the end of next year, Junior number 2, who just got his license today, goes to college. We're going to be down 50%. And I've already told Mrs. Ambrose exactly what you just said.
Mhm.
We're downsizing. And what Ken is saying is that there's a point where everyone in the community needs to hear me as the leader say, we're downsizing. And I'm telling you, it's coming fast. Right. And I told the board that because they asked me to cut these positions and then added them back in. And Mike is right. I did what you asked me to do. And I said, you asked me to do this. If you want to put them back, you put them back. I don't have any, I did the work you asked me to do. But what I want to be clear about is that you're right. I'm not disagreeing with you at all. That when you have the number of students come down and you're still in a big house, you have to pay the heat and electricity and the maintenance on the big house and the mortgage. And what Ken is saying is there's got to be a right sizing at some point. And I want to be transparent right out of the gate. The board asked me to stay and help you go through this. And so in order to do that, because I learned the first time when I moved the middle school, I learned a valuable lesson when people told me that I wasn't transparent. I'm saying it right now on the microphone in a recorded meeting. We're going to have to right size. I don't know what it looks like. Ken wants to talk about it tonight. I'm just saying, give me a break, man. I can't do it today, but I will do it right when the board asks me to. But I'm telling you that right sizing has to happen because you can't go from 1,650 students to 1,230 and not have some right sizing. But we have been cutting positions, to be totally clear.
And as I said, the budget last week, I was not going to make.
I know. Thanks, Ken.
They voted yes on, but.
Yep.
But the school board listened to the public and didn't pay attention to the wallet and said, oh yeah, we'll have them back in. Now, Tom, go find the money.
Thank you.
And I guess I can't say that's okay. It's not. Nobody's increasing my budget this year. I think Social Security is going up, what, 2%? And Medicare is going up 2.5%. So that works. You know, I get another 100 and they take out 120. It's a big help.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of us in the community that are living on Social Security. We don't have the benefit. We can go out and collect cans. No, that helps. But we don't have the benefit of paying increased taxes every year. The same goes for the towns. They got to hear the same thing. But I just can't approve any increase like that. And I guess that's all my questions.
Ken, I hope you feel heard because I really do hear you. Thank you for sharing. I do. I hear you.
I appreciate that very much.
So that is roundtable on the school board recommended budget. Options are voting, making a motion, delaying. I'm right where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, we have to adopt the budget and develop the warrant and get everything ready. We have about 2 weeks.
Yep.
So
This is the time if anyone wants to make a motion
A motion for what?
to vote on this, on what we want to do for the budget to present to.
Am I allowed?
Yeah.
I don't know how it works.
Oh,
Whether
just let me, so we are making a motion to approve the budget that will go out to the public. And so we'll do, oh no, I'm going to get them swapped. Deliberative. We have 2 more meetings.
They're on the agenda too. I listed them at the bottom. You got the public hearing.
And delivered, yeah.
Deliberative, Yep.
Yep.
And then a meeting prior to that.
and you have to develop BudCom develops the slides for the public hearing, which we'll help with.
Yep.
And I will help with. I'm sure Michael will help too. He's really good at that.
Yep. And so it goes to the public twice. And so we'll have an opportunity to vote again. And so right now we're just doing the vote on that budget to go to the public hearing.
I so moved that we have that vote tonight.
Oh, someone just needs to make a motion to
Well, I'll do it.
approve or
You
amend.
don't want to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would like to make a motion to adopt the school board's recommended operating budget.
Can you say the amount for the record?
Oh, sure. Somebody help me. I make a motion to accept the school board's recommended operating budget in the amount of,
40 million.
thank you, $40,322,601.20, which I said last night too. I should have remembered.
Wow.
It's now second.
I am on both.
All right. Amanda, second. All in favor?
Aye.
How do we do this?
Aye. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. Against? 2. And abstain? 4.
I plan to abstain from voting on the appropriation this year because we lack access to some information needed to determine whether the proposed budget is sufficient to cover next year's financial obligations. And that's why I'm abstaining.
And so it passed 4, 3, or 4, 2, and 1. All right. And so that's what will go to the public hearing. All right. So that vote happened. Thank you everyone for all of the conversations on that and for the vote. Public comment was up next on the agenda. There's no one here. And committee comment. I'll go same thing as always. Round table. Brooks, anything?
Something I just thought of, just out of curiosity, because I feel like I don't know where this money has come from, who was responsible for it, and where it has gone. And talking about is the money to pay for the school, which had just gotten paid off in August.
Yep.
Was that coming out of the school district's budget?
There are two sources. So
Okay.
I'll give you the simple, like the digestible version.
Okay.
So there's a when a building is built, there's a warrant,
Mhm.
and the community approves the appropriation, and then it's splayed out through the municipal bonds over the 20-year period, interest, the whole normal, like a mortgage, right? And then the state at that time paid a certain portion of that money. So what happens is it happened exactly as we told you it would last year. When what we did was we waited to support the capital improvement plan and the teacher's contract for the year that the bond came off.
Okay.
So you approved the raise that people approved for the teachers. And I feel badly because we've been so focused on so many very challenging things this year that I haven't said publicly enough thank you to the people that voted in the collective bargaining agreement, because we are doing way better with staff retention and recruitment. The NEASC people noted a 50% change in staff retention. 50%. The year that they first came, we lost almost 50 people. Last year, we lost barely 20. It was incredible, the difference. And it's one part culture, one part relationships, and one part money. Because when it's money, people have to live. So that has made a huge difference. And so what happened was this year, when the collective bargaining agreement, it absorbed the collective bargaining agreement. So instead of seeing your taxes or the default go up because of the CBA, the fact that money came off offset that. And that's also part of how we added in the money for the capital improvement. And we timed that carefully. I waited 6 years to add that money, and I still cut 100,000 from it. I wanted to do 400,000 and we did 260.
270.
270. So I cut 130 from what we originally wanted to propose when the insurance came in.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure that you know that we tried. It's a great question. We tried to time this so that those two things collided and it worked.
I'm good.
Just, I'm disappointed that this is the way it goes. I live in a community of all senior citizens. We've all downsized.
Mhm.
We've gone through these growing pains. We're all on fixed incomes, and this is really tough. Some of our neighbors are starting to move because it's actually turning out to be cheaper to live in Massachusetts
Mhm.
than to live here with the taxes. And that's kind of sad. But all I can do is express my disappointment, and that's all I've got to say about it.
Amanda.
I'm happy that we're coming in under the default, so I do appreciate that, and I recognize that, you know, everybody's taking on a tax burden. Like, it's not that it's not hurting everybody. Like, everybody's household is feeling the effects of it. But I do think everything's being balanced properly with the needs of the kids in the school district, while still being mindful of, you know, not frivolously spending money. So that's my comment.
And
Ken's.
he's back. Any other comments, Ken?
Nope.
And I don't have any other comments as well. Thank you all for meeting today. Our next meeting is going to be January 9th in the new year. And that is a planning for the public hearing. We have a template that we use and we just plug in the new numbers. And we will review it during that time for any comments and talk about logistics of who's saying what and when. The public hearing is the budget committee's meeting, and then deliberative is a combination. So,
At 7 p.m.
yes, the budget committee meets at 7. Sorry, is it not on there? Okay, 7 p.m. And then the public hearing, yep, is on the following week.
I wasn't obviously in this role last year when the deadline for signing the MS-27 is listed there. But do you actually sign it? Do you guys actually sign on that date, or do you sign it prior to? I mean, I'm gonna have it ready long before January 20th. But I just don't want people to put that on their calendar if we're not actually going to meet on the 20th. We're going to take care of it.
Well, you're going to need meetings to sign things and meetings to do the slides to be ready
Yeah, those are.
for the presentation. So I don't.
You remember last year when you guys signed the MS-27? Was it on the?
Matt drive
the
around and
equivalent to
get
the 16th?
signatures. We've done that before.
I remember doing it during the public hearing, but I don't remember if that was the
Probably
first
did it.
year or the second year.
Okay, thanks.
But
We'll
Probably
ask.
did it on the equivalent to the 16th is my guess, because it's going to be done long by then. It's not something that's that difficult for me to put together. So, okay.
We're still checking in with Mr. Angel once in a while to make sure we've got our I's dotted and T's crossed. He's really the expert. What's that?
Don't forget the lowercase j's.
That's lowercase j's.
Hope he's doing well.
He is. He's got a
Um,
huge help.
Does that answer your question, Matt, though?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so
I was also asking it partially for everybody else's
Oh.
benefit too. If they're new to the committee, like Brooks might put that in his calendar, but if we're,
Yeah.
He may not have to show up on the night of the 20th.
get it over with. All right, so next meeting, January 9th, 7 p.m. Here for us to talk about planning. All right?
Thank you.
I make a movie adjourn.
Yes, yeah. It is 8:19 and can adjourn the meeting.